Disclaimer: it's inspired by reality, shaped by imagination. Nobody expected it to go this far. When country superstar Blake Shelton sat down at the View table, the plan was simple: promote his new album, crack a few jokes, maybe share a sweet story about Gwen Stefani. But Joy Behar had other plans. Within minutes, the conversation shifted from music to politics. Specifically, Blake's controversial stances that have divided fans and critics alike. What started as playful banter turned into a no-holds-barred clash between America's country darling and one of TV's sharpest political commentators. The studio audience gasped, the producers scrambled, and before the hour was over, Blake Shelton would be kicked off the set, live, on national television. This wasn't just an interview, it was a showdown no one saw coming. The set of The View was buzzing with a little extra energy that morning. The coffee mugs were filled, the crew hustled behind the cameras, and the chatter from the audience had a lively hum. The producers knew why. Blake Shelton was in the building. The Oklahoma-born country star wasn't just there to sing a new single, he was there to charm. Blake had a way of making a studio feel like a front porch in the South, and he was already working his magic backstage. He was laughing with the makeup crew, cracking jokes with the interns, and even posed for a selfie with an older gentleman who had wandered in from the audience line just to catch a glimpse of that voice guy. When the theme music hit and the women of The View took their seats, Blake's name was announced and the audience erupted. The country singer strode onto the stage with his trademark grin, a well-worn denim jacket over a crisp shirt, and that relaxed, folksy swagger that had made him a fixture on television. Joy Behar leaned back in her chair, smiling, microphone in hand. "Well, look who the wind blew in. I guess we're classy enough for country royalty today." Blake grinned, taking his seat. "Royalty? No, ma'am. I'm more like the guy who works the grill at the county fair." Laughter filled the room. It was warm, easy. Joy played along. "Well, as long as you brought us a turkey leg, you can stay." For the first 10 minutes, the conversation was exactly what the audience expected. They talked about Blake's upcoming album, the stories behind the songs, his tour schedule, even a few lighthearted anecdotes about life with Gwen Stefani. He told a hilarious story about trying to impress her by cooking, only to set off the smoke alarm in their Los Angeles home. The audience loved it. Joy loved it. Even the more serious co-hosts were leaning in, nodding and smiling. It was a love fest. But then, almost imperceptibly, the air shifted. Sunny Hostin brought up a question from the audience. "Blake, you've been known to speak your mind about certain political topics in interviews. Has that ever gotten in the way of your career?" Blake leaned back, still smiling, but the smile had a trace of steel in it. "Well, sure. I mean, if you've got an opinion these days, someone's going to hate you for it. But I'm not in this business to make everybody happy. I'm in it to tell the truth as I see it." The crowd gave a polite smattering of applause. Joy, sensing the pivot, sat up a little straighter. "And that's the thing, Blake," she said with that knowing smirk. "Sometimes your truth rubs a whole lot of people the wrong way." Blake's grin didn't fade, but his eyes sharpened. "Well, Joy, I figure folks are smart enough to decide what they agree with. I'm not here to live in an echo chamber. My fans, whether they agree with me or not, know where I stand. That's called being real." It wasn't hostile yet, but you could feel the tension rising, like a storm cloud rolling in over a sunny pasture. Sarah Haynes tried to smooth things over, steering the conversation back to music, but Joy wasn't ready to let go. "You know, sometimes when celebrities take strong stances, it alienates the very people who support them," she said, tapping her pen on the table. "Don't you worry about that?" Blake shrugged. "If you spend all your time worrying about who's mad at you, you'll never say anything worth hearing." The audience gave another round of applause, but this time the reaction was split. Half cheered, half stayed quiet. Joy noticed, and she wasn't about to waste that energy. "Well, Blake," she said, leaning in, "I guess we'll see if your fans feel the same way after what we talk about next." The crowd made a collective "ooh" sound, sensing something was about to go down. Blake raised an eyebrow, a slow, almost challenging smile creeping across his face. The warm welcome was over. The gloves, though invisible, had been slipped on. What happened next would turn a lighthearted country music segment into one of The View's most controversial moments of the year. The first laugh of the morning had barely settled before Joy Behar leaned forward, eyes narrowing just enough to signal a shift in tone. Her voice, warm a moment ago, now carried the unmistakable edge of a prosecutor about to cross-examine a witness. "So, Blake," she began, tapping the stack of blue cue cards on the desk like a gavel, "you've been in the headlines lately, not for your music, but for certain political comments you made." The audience reaction was instant, a low murmur rippling through the crowd, followed by a few audible gasps. Cameras caught Blake's expression flicker, just for a second, from casual charm to guarded awareness. Blake chuckled lightly, leaning back in his chair. "Joy, I've been in the headlines for all kinds of things. Sometimes it's my songs. Sometimes it's my hair. Sometimes it's just because I ordered too much barbecue. You know how it is." The crowd laughed, but Joy didn't join them. She held her gaze steady. "This isn't about brisket, Blake. It's about your stance on certain policies that a lot of Americans, including people in this audience, find, well, let's just say, divisive." The word hung in the air like smoke. George Stephanopoulos, ever the diplomat, stepped in with a smooth pivot. "To be fair, Blake, you've always been outspoken about where you come from and what you believe, but do you feel like you have a responsibility to your fans to keep politics out of your public image?" Blake's smile thinned. "George, here's the thing. I'm not here to tell people how to think. I sing songs, I tell stories about where I'm from, and yeah, sometimes I speak my mind. If folks agree, great. If they don't, they're still welcome at my concerts. My music doesn't have a political party." Joy tilted her head, her smile turning faintly incredulous. "But you have to admit, when you have a platform as big as yours, your words can do more than entertain. They can influence. And some of the things you've said have hurt people, people who used to look up to you." Blake's eyes sharpened. "Joy, I grew up in Oklahoma. We didn't have much, but we had neighbors who looked out for each other. We didn't check voting records before we lent somebody a hand. I've never wanted to hurt anybody, but I'm not going to apologize for loving my country or standing by what I believe in." The applause that followed was split, half the audience clapping, half sitting stiff in silence. The tension was now undeniable. Joy leaned back, crossing her arms. "It's not about loving your country, Blake. It's about what that love looks like to other people. And when you say certain things, you might be telling a whole group of Americans they don't belong in your vision of it." Blake's jaw tightened, his good old boy ease starting to crack. "Or maybe, Joy, some folks are just looking to be offended. I don't wake up in the morning thinking about how to divide people. I think about how to make music that brings them together. If people can't separate an opinion from a melody, that's on them, not me." The crowd reacted again, some with approving whistles, others with uneasy shifting in their seats. George tried to steer the conversation back to safer waters. "Well, music has always been political in its own way, from protest songs to national anthems. Maybe the real question is whether an artist can ever truly be neutral." Blake nodded, trying to ease back into calm. "I get that, George, but here's my truth. I'm not a politician. I don't want to run for office. I just want to sing my songs and live my life without every little thing turning into a headline." Joy raised an eyebrow. "And yet, here we are." The line drew a roar from the audience, half in laughter, half in a "she got him" kind of way. Blake smiled thinly, but his hands were clasped tighter now, knuckles whitening just enough for the cameras to catch. The battle lines were drawn, and everyone in that studio and watching at home knew the conversation was about to go from uncomfortable to explosive. The tension in the studio had already been simmering, but now it began to boil. Joy leaned forward in her seat, eyes narrowing slightly. "Blake, you keep saying you're just standing up for what you believe in," she said, her voice laced with skepticism. "But when you align yourself with certain political positions, you're not just speaking for yourself, you're influencing millions of fans who might not see the whole picture." Blake leaned back in his chair, his jaw tightening. "Joy, with all due respect, my fans aren't sheep. They're smart enough to make their own decisions. I sing songs, I share my opinions, and they can take it or leave it. I'm not forcing anyone to believe what I believe." The audience murmured, a mix of applause and low disapproval. Joy seized the moment. "But don't you think that with your level of influence comes a responsibility to be careful about what you endorse? Words matter, Blake. They can inspire unity, or they can spread division." Blake's easygoing charm was starting to fade. His voice took on a sharper edge. "And who decides what's divisive, Joy? You? The media? If my opinion doesn't line up with yours, suddenly I'm the bad guy?" Joy didn't flinch. "It's not about you being the bad guy, it's about accountability. When you post certain slogans or stand next to certain politicians, it means something. You can't just shrug and act like it's harmless." Blake's hands clenched together on his knee. "I grew up in a small Oklahoma town, Joy. We were taught to speak our minds and not be scared into silence. Lately, it feels like if you don't say exactly what people want to hear, they try to cancel you." The air in the studio grew thick. Sunny Hostin and Sarah Haynes exchanged glances, sensing that the conversation was spiraling. Sarah jumped in softly. "Blake, maybe what Joy is saying is—" But Blake cut in, his voice rising. "No, I get what Joy is saying. She's saying my values don't fit the mold she likes, so they must be wrong. But here's the thing. Country music is built on telling the truth, not just what's popular in Hollywood or New York." The audience erupted, half clapping, half booing. The sound was chaotic, almost drowning out Joy's next words. "That's the problem, Blake," she said, her voice steady but louder now. "This isn't about Hollywood. It's about understanding that the world is bigger than your hometown. Some of the positions you've taken hurt people, real people, and you can't hide behind 'it's just my opinion' when those people's rights are on the line." Blake shook his head, frustration etched deep into his face. "So I'm just supposed to stop talking? Keep my mouth shut so I don't offend someone? That's not who I am. That's not America." Joy's expression hardened. "No one's saying you can't talk, Blake, but freedom of speech doesn't mean freedom from consequences." There it was, the spark that lit the fire. The audience reacted instantly with a wave of gasps and shouts. Blake's eyes narrowed, his jaw set. And there it is, the threat, the "watch what you say or you'll pay for it" line. "You know what, Joy? I'd rather get kicked off this stage than be told my voice doesn't matter." The tension was electric now. You could almost hear the producers in the control room debating whether to cut to commercial. Blake's southern warmth had evaporated, replaced by the steel of a man who felt cornered. Joy, for her part, looked unshaken, like she'd been in this kind of fight 100 times before. Sarah tried once more to interject, "Maybe we can all take a breath." But Blake leaned forward, looking Joy square in the eye. "You want me to play nice, nod along, and act like I don't have my own mind? Sorry, not happening." The crowd roared, split right down the middle, half cheering for his defiance, half siding with Joy's insistence on accountability. The cameras zoomed in on Blake's face, then on Joy's, capturing the moment for what it was. Two worlds colliding on live television, and neither side willing to blink. The tension had reached a point of no return. Everyone in the studio knew this wasn't ending with a polite handshake. The studio had gone quiet for a moment after Joy's last jab, but it was a dangerous kind of quiet, the kind that meant the air was about to crack. Blake sat back in his chair, shaking his head slowly, a bitter smile tugging at the corner of his mouth. You know, he said finally, his voice low but carrying through the studio, I came here to talk about music, about the good stuff we do in our communities. But apparently, Joy wants to turn this into a gotcha ambush. Joy folded her arms. Blake, if you can't handle a little pushback, maybe you shouldn't. That was it. Blake leaned forward, his tone no longer measured. No, see, this is the problem. You all sit up here acting like folks who disagree with you are evil. I've played shows for people from all walks of life. Farmers, veterans, single moms, factory workers. And you're sitting here telling me they're wrong to think for themselves? Sonny Hostin tried to interject. Blake, I think what Joy's saying is, but Blake cut him off, his voice rising. No, I hear what she's saying. She's saying my fans, my friends, are backward, ignorant, because they don't toe the same line. Well, let me tell you something. Those people feed you. They build this country. And I'm done letting folks like you look down on them. The audience erupted in applause, mixed with a few boos. Joy's jaw tightened. She glanced at the producers off stage, then turned back to him. You can play the victim all you want, Blake, but if you align yourself with certain positions, you have to answer for them. That's the job when you're in the public eye. Blake's eyes narrowed. You think I don't answer for what I believe? Lady, I've stood in bars where people wanted to throw me out for playing the wrong song. I've dealt with death threats over charity work. And yet I show up here thinking we could have a civil talk, but instead I get sandbagged by someone who's never set foot where I come from? Whoopi, sensing the tension boiling over, tried to wrap the segment. Okay, we're running low on time. Blake stood up suddenly, his mic crackling. No, we're out of time because this isn't a conversation. It's a setup. And I'm not going to sit here and be your punching bag so you can get a viral clip. The audience gasped. Joy leaned back with a smirk, as if daring him to keep going. If you walk out now, Blake, it says more about you than it does about me. He took a deep breath, looked directly into the camera, and said, then let it say this. I won't be part of a show that treats honest people like garbage for sport. Without another word, Blake unclipped his mic, tossed it on the couch, and walked off stage. The camera tried to follow, but the producers cut abruptly to a wide shot of the table, catching Joy raising her eyebrows in exaggerated innocence. The tension in the room was electric. Whoopi muttered, "We'll be right back," before the show cut to a commercial break. Backstage, witnesses later reported hearing Blake refusing to return, telling producers, you wanted fireworks? Well, congrats, you got 'em. On social media, the walk-off began trending within minutes. Fans flooded Twitter with hashtags like #StandWithBlake and #ViewMeltdown, while others mocked him for being too thin-skinned for daytime TV. By the time the show came back from commercial, Blake's empty chair sat glaringly at the table. Joy wasted no time saying, well, folks, sometimes people can't take a little heat, but here on The View, we're not here to coddle anyone. The studio audience half clapped, half shifted awkwardly. The cameras moved on, but the moment had already burned itself into TV history. Blake Shelton hadn't just left The View, he had detonated it. The studio felt different the next day. Not because the chairs had been rearranged or the lights adjusted, but because the ghost of what had happened with Blake Shelton still lingered. The empty space where he had sat seemed to hum with unresolved tension. Clips of his walk-off had dominated social media overnight. Country radio hosts were dissecting every word, political commentators were framing it as a culture clash, and Blake's fan base was split right down the middle. Some were furious that The View had disrespected a good man. Others argued that Blake had exposed his own hypocrisy live on national TV. Joy Behar, true to form, opened the next show with a half-smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. Well, folks, she said, yesterday was, eventful. I guess some people just can't take the heat. The audience chuckled, some uncomfortably. Behind the scenes, producers debated whether they'd gone too far. Yes, controversy brought ratings. Yes, the internet was still talking. But they'd also alienated a swath of Blake's loyal fans. The tension wasn't just between Blake and Joy anymore. He was between the show and an entire slice of America. And yet, Blake stayed quiet for 24 hours. No tweets, no interviews, no statements. When he finally spoke, it wasn't through a press release, it was on his Instagram. The video was simple. Blake sitting on his back porch in Oklahoma, guitar in hand, a mug of coffee beside him. "I'm not here to stir the pot," he began, his voice low and steady. "I just think we've forgotten how to listen to each other. I walked off because I wasn't being heard. Simple as that. That's not political, that's human." The video went viral, not in the loud, sensational way of a heated TV clip, but in the quieter, more enduring way of a moment that feels real. People shared it with captions like, "This is why I love Blake Shelton," or "This is what we need more of." And yet, there was still a shadow over his public image. The walk-off became part of his legacy, another chapter in the ongoing debate over whether celebrities should engage in political discourse at all. Some said it showed strength, others said it showed weakness. Joy, for her part, doubled down in an interview weeks later. "If you're going to take strong public stances, you'd better be ready to defend them. Otherwise, maybe stick to singing." But outside the noise, there was an undeniable truth. What happened between Blake Shelton and Joy Behar wasn't just about politics. It was about identity, culture, and the fragile state of public conversation in America. It was about two people from two different worlds meeting at the crossroads of entertainment and ideology, and neither willing to budge. And maybe, just maybe, that was why the moment stuck. If you liked this intense moment, make sure to subscribe for more celebrity clashes, emotional showdowns, and unforgettable TV moments. Drop a comment below. Do you think Blake Shelton was right to walk off, or should he have stayed and fought his corner?